Well, hi guys, Coach Jerry here at The Protocol, and welcome to Coach's Corner. This is one video out of a multi-part series that we're working on here called Deadlift 101. Today I'm going to be tackling the question sumo deadlift versus conventional deadlift. This is a very ugly, deep, dark rabbit hole on the internet, and I hope that if you stumbled across this video, this provides a little bit of a voice of reason as opposed to some of the nonsense that is out there. If you've accidentally stumbled across too much of that to begin with and you're not sure what to believe, I'll start with a big picture perspective of what I think is a good way to start this conversation. So you hear all the debates on the internet and you're thinking to yourself, man, which do I believe? What's better, sumo or conventional? And let's say you're the type that would just go and start Googling all-time deadlift world records. Well, if you did that, what you would discover is about half of them were set conventional and about half of them were set sumo. So hopefully that puts your mindset into the right spot to where the information that's in this video is going to be helpful to you. What I'm trying to provide to you guys is a coach's eye, like what my eyes look for when I'm looking at somebody who's starting off on their deadlift journey as to whether or not they are more of a conventional puller or more of a sumo puller. Some of this can be determined by levers. I, for example, have a very short torso, fairly long arms, and fairly long legs. Technically, I'm more suited for a conventional stance. However, I personally do not pull conventional. I do pull a, like what we call a narrow sumo. So that is not necessarily an end-all be-all. And the reason I do that, by the way, is because it is the position that allows me to lift the largest amount of weight without pain. Now, so let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this. There are basically, the two positions are as follows. Sumo, your feet are very wide and your hands are on the inside of your knees and you're grabbing from this position and you're standing up from here. The conventional position, your feet are basically right underneath your hips and your arms are on the outside of your knee. So that's conventional versus sumo. What's important to know about these two positions is the hip hinge position. So I have the video camera here sideways so you can see this. I'm going to set up, actually you know what, I'm going to start off with a conventional stance. And I'm going to grab my bar and I want you to pay attention to the position that you see my thighs and my back in. So my knees are behind the bar and my hip hinge position is fairly, like my torso is almost horizontal, which based on my levers is the position that I need to get to lift from that stance. Now I'm going to get into a sumo position. This is a very, very different start position, and you can see it in the angle of my thigh. The big difference here is, well, the hardest part of a deadlift is cracking the bar off the floor. When you're in this position, you're relying more on your quads to crack the bar from the floor. In the conventional, you're relying more on your hips and your spinal erectors to crack the bar off the floor. Again, it depends on where your strengths are. As we say, sometimes you just got to dance with the one that brung you. The thing that I want to pay attention to, though, is once you start to get a little bit of weight on the bar, this is where you can really start to see if someone's truly a sumo deadlifter or a conventional deadlifter. What I'll notice, in our gym, because this is a kettlebell gym, we do a lot of swings here, most people are very powerful in that more conventional kettlebell swing hip hinge position, which you'll notice a lot of kettlebellers do tend to deadlift conventional because of that. Gravity does not lie. If you get yourself into a sumo because you saw too many things on the internet saying that this is a better way to pull, and you go to pull the bar, if the first thing that happens when you have a decent amount of weight, like maybe say about 50-60% of your 1 rep max, you'll start to notice it. If the first thing that you see is your butt lifting too much and then getting into this position and then finishing the stand, basically all you're doing here is you're pulling a conventional deadlift with your feet in a sumo position. This is not going to work, and any efficiency that you gain from a sumo lift is going to be lost because of the change in your body's position. In other words, if you can crack a fairly heavy weight off the floor in this position where everything lifts at the same time, if you can do that, chances are the sumo deadlift is something that would be worth possibly pursuing. If what happens with your heavy weight, your butt flies straight up, and that's the first thing that happens, and you can't adjust that just by fixing it in your form and technique. Chances are pretty good you're a conventional puller. I'll leave you guys with one last big picture idea here. One of the main differences also between the conventional stance and the sumo stance is how you crack it off the floor. You don't want to, in the conventional stance, you don't want to imagine that you're bending over and lifting a bar up. You want to imagine more like you're pushing your feet down through the ground. So the force is being pushed down and your body is straightening up. When you're in a sumo stance, you're not pushing the floor down. What's actually happening is, if you imagine I've got a seam running down the middle of the ground here between my feet, I'm trying to split that seam apart right as I crack the bar off the floor. So I've heard this explained multiple ways, but like if you imagine like you're trying to shove your toes into the front of your shoe, you're pushing this way. So you're in here and you're moving out, and your body is straightening as a result of you shoving the floor apart, splitting that seam between your knees. So those are two just kind of mental cues of how you crack the bar off the floor. I would say if you're not sure, you can spend some time practicing both. You can also send us a video to using the links that are in the description below. I'll be happy to take a peek at your deadlift and give you a coach's perspective. That's about all I had for this video, guys. We'll see you again soon.